what can be nicer in this weather than sitting at home in warmth, drinking nicely brewed tea, and having a good read at hand? Well, in many of those evenings or days when you wanted something to get away, my father had an advice for me. Natalie, read Robert Shekley. He's a great sci-fi author, my dad used to tell me. And indeed he is. Oh, indeed, because this nice book I'm going to present is Mindswap. He has written many short stories, and any of them it's satiric or ironic or just sci-fi, but all of them are pretty cool. But Mindswap is a full novel, small one, but still a full novel. Oh, and it's such a... Well, how can I say? There is irony, the fullest, and satire, the fullest too. You know, capable to fill out really every page of it. That is the book that I have already read, and I really advise it to persons who want to get away to another dimension, great and adventurous story, have to experience action and drama and suspense and really action. Oh yes, it is. It begins slowly, but even the beginning gets the high rate of adventure, new things, something great and unimaginable. That's actually, I think the best feature of science fiction books is the atmosphere, that something that our main characters consider usual stuff or the normal environment for them is just unimaginary for us. And I really envy those writers who can imagine this in the first place as a point to begin with. Like, okay, this action story begins in the planet of blah blah blah, in the interstellar. Come on, this whole situation is already so out of place. By the way, just for the circumstances. When you want to get away, you can get away to another planet, to another lifestyle, to be in the skin of a person who can see many other things than Earth, than your flat. That's the best in sci-fi. That's why I love them. And Robert Shekley and Ray Bradbury and many others. Well, many. Harry Harrison. Yeah, that's one of my favorites, really. But Robert Shekley has got one thing no one else has from those that I named. It has just a great sense of humor, irony, satire, and oh my gosh. Just let's start and see how much of it is already in the first chapter. So, and maybe you will really say, "Hi, that's a good beginning for a story to read." Let's see. And I had to Google a little to present everything. All right. Chapter 1, Mindswap. Chapter 1. Marvin Flynn read the following advertisement in the classified section of Stanhope Gazette. Gentleman from Mars, age 43, quiet, studious, cultured, wishes to exchange bodies with similarly inclined Earth gentlemen, August 1st to September 1st. References exchanged, brokers protected. This commonplace announcement was enough to set Flynn's pulse racing. To swap bodies with a Martian. It was an exciting idea, but also a repellent one. After all, no one would want some sand-grubbing old Martian inside his head, moving his arms and legs, looking out of his eyes and listening with his ears. But in return for this unpleasantness, he, Marvin Flynn, would be able to see Mars. And he would be able to see it as it should be seen, through the senses of a native. Commonplace indeed. Everybody do this every day, yeah? Okay. As some wish to collect paintings, other books, others women, so Marvin Flynn wanted to acquire the substance of them all through travel. But this, his ruling passion, was sadly unfulfilled. He had been born and raised in Stanhope, New York. Physically, this town was some 300 miles from New York City, but spiritually and emotionally, the two cities were about 100 years apart. Oh, this reminds me of a joke I met in the internet. And I meet it sometimes, I bump over it. It goes like, how nice it is, how awesome it is to realize that there is a different time now at this moment in different parts of the planet. In New York, it's midnight. In Japan, it is early morning. And in my place, it is Middle Ages. Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So, going back to the story. Stanhope was a pleasing rural community situated in the foothills of Adirondacks, garlanded with orchards and dotted with clusters of brown cows against rolling green pasture land, invincibly bucolic, if you know what's that, right, please. Stanhope clung to antique ways, amiably, but with a pint of pugnacity. The town kept its distance from the flint-hearted megapolis in the south. The IRT 7th Avenue subway had burrowed upstate as far as Kingston, but no farther. Gigantic freeways twisted their concrete tentacles over the countryside, but could not take over Stanhope's elm-lined Main Street. Other communities maintained a blast pit. Stanhope clung to his antiquated jet field and was content with 3 weekly service. Often at night, Marvin had lain in bed and listened to that poignant sound of vanishing rural America, the lonely wail of a jetliner. Stanhope was satisfied with itself, and the rest of the world seems quite satisfied with Stanhope and willing to leave it to its romantic dream of a less hurried age. The only person whom the arrangement did not suit was Marvin Flynn. He had gone on the usual tours and had seen the usual things. Like everyone else, he had spent many weekends in the capitals of Europe. Guess I'm not everyone else. Well, let's see. Maybe there are not many of us who can who can associate each other with everyone else from this book. And he had explored the sunken city of Miami by scuba. I thought It was more likely to be Venice, but okay, Miami. Gazed at the hanging gardens of London? Really? So by the time he turned to the sand and had worshipped in the Baha'i temple in Haifa. Oh, that sent me laughing. Haifa is in Israel, and Baha'i is, Islamic temple. Oops. Political, religious jokes. Oh. I was reciting from the book. Nothing criminal. It is not my opinion. No, just in case, Okay. For his longer vacations, he had gone on a walking tour across Mary Bird Land. It is in Antarctica. Explored the lower Ituri rainforest. Kenya, there is war going on, but it is still a rainforest indeed. Crossed Xinjiang by camel. It is indeed a Chinese desert. Nothing special. And had even lived for several weeks in Lhasa, the art capital of the world. Art? Well, Lhasa is in Tibet and it is a spiritual center, but not the world. What kind of the world is it, huh? In all of this, his actions were typical of his agent station. My gosh. When do the middle-aged persons travel to Antarctica? I'm a very poor person in experiences. No. But these trips meant nothing to him. They were the usual tourist assortment, the sorts of things that any casual vacationer was likely to do. Instead of rejoicing in what he had, Flynn complained for what was denied him. He wanted to really travel, and that meant going extraterrestrial. It didn't seem too much to ask, and yet he had never even been to the moon. Oh, it's like I can say I have never been even to Thailand, which I'm proud of. But here, he had never even been to the moon even. I wonder what is the most common outdoor place in your location. Like pop place to travel. Like one third of Russia during summer or winter vacation goes off to 3 pop places: Thailand, Turkey, and Egypt. Oh, these are the big 3 for Russians. All right. It didn't seem too much to... okay. Sorry. In the final analysis, it was a matter of economics. Interstellar travel was expensive. For the most part, it was confined to the rich or to colonists and administrators. It was simply one of the questions for the average sort of fellow. Unless, of course, he wished to avail himself of the advantages of the mind swap. Flynn, innate small-town conservatism, had avoided this logical but unsettling step until now. Marvin had tried to reconcile himself to his position in life and to the very acceptable possibilities that position offered him. After all, he was free, gay, not in this sense, and 31, a little over 31 actually. He was personable, a tall, broad-shouldered boy with clipped black mustache and gentle brown eyes. He was healthy, intelligent, a good mixer, and not unacceptable to the other sex. He had received the usual education: grade school, high school, 12 years of college. Really? And 4 years of postgraduate work. I thought I I spend much time on education. Well, doctors can say, phew, that's nothing. But spending 9 years on teacher training university, well, I had a gap. Okay. He was well trained for his job with the Paik Patters Corporation. There, he fluoroscoped plastic toys, subjecting them to stress analysis and examining them for micro shrinkage, porosity, texture fatigue, and the like. Perhaps it wasn't the most important job in the world, but then we can't all be kings or spaceships pilots. Indeed. Oh, it reminds me so much of my job as a teacher. Like, come on, you knew that the teacher is a difficult job. If you wanted something easy, you could be, I don't know, a rocket scientist. Well, it's like a multitask job, really. I tried to count how many different duties we should do if we work in a state school. Well, quite many, you should know your subject perfectly. You should, or be on perfect, quite able organizer. You should know, you should be an expert at least a little bit in psychology, in gender and age psychology. You should work with parents. You should maintain your classroom. You should tidy up. Many things. But god damn it, it's rewarding. Yes, we teachers in some countries are really underpaid, but it is rewarding in a different scale. You not just go to be a teacher to teach children and receive money for that. Come on, you are training the next generation to have their shape of thoughts, form their way of thinking, and form their way of learning. The learning doesn't stop when we finish school, when we finish university. The learning never stops. You always, every occasion you encounter something new, you start learning. I'm sorry. Education is really my favorite subject here to talk. If you want me to talk for hours, just ask me something about my job. Alright, and we have got just a little bit left. Alright. Yeah, spaceship pilot. It was certainly a responsible position, especially when one considers the importance of toys in this world and the vital task of alleviating the frustrations of children. Marvin knew all this, and yet he was unsatisfied. In vain he had gone to this neighborhood counselor. This kindly man had tried to help Marvin through situation factor analysis, but Marvin had not responded with insight. He wanted to travel. He refused to look honestly and hidden implication of that desire, and he would not accept any substitutes. And now, reading that mundane yet thrilling advertisement, similar to 1,000 others yet unique in its particularity, since he was at the moment reading it, Marvin felt a strange sensation in his throat. To swap bodies with a Martian. To see Mars, to visit the burrow of the Sand King, to travel through the aural splendor of the wound, to listen to the chromatic sands on the great dry sea. He had dreamed it before, but this time was different. That strange sensation in his throat argued a decision in the forming. Marvin wisely did not try to force it. Instead, he put on his beanie and went downtown to the Stanhope Pharmacy. I wouldn't think that it would be all very well if I had so many pages before me. So, next time